Okay, so imagine that you want to open a retail shop where every single customer enters with the explicit goal of taking your money, armed with mathematical models, historical data, and deep personal conviction. Your starting inventory costs precisely $0 to manufacture, but a single operational error on a Tuesday night can wipe out your entire quarterly profit margin. To keep the lights on, you have to convince millions of suburban sports fans to hand over $91 for the right to win 100, while taking a cut so small it would make a grocery store manager weep. Analysts at major financial institutions calculate that the average customer loses their entire initial deposit within 37 days. By month 3, 95% of all active accounts are in the red. The average lifetime value of a casual user hovering over their phone during Monday Night Football sits somewhere between $200 and $400, yet the company spending $300 just to acquire that user somehow convinced Wall Street it was a tech unicorn. Sounds like a plan only a bankrupt hedge fund manager could love. And for the past 6 years, it has been the fastest growing sector in American entertainment. This is not a story about gambling. Gambling is what happens in a neon-drenched room in Nevada where a guy in a velvet jacket spins a small ivory ball. What unfolded across the United States after May 2018, when the Supreme Court struck down the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act in Murphy v. National Collegiate Athletic Association, was something entirely different. It was the rapid, venture capital-funded conversion of state-level gaming licenses into a hyper-financialized consumer software ecosystem. For decades, legal sports betting in America was confined to Nevada, operating on a conservative cash-and-carry casino model built around physical sportsbooks and foot traffic. When the legal dam broke, it did not create a new generation of sophisticated bookmakers. Instead, it triggered a land grab by digital platforms that viewed human attention not as something to be entertained, but as an asset class to be monetized through mobile applications, push notifications, and frictionless payment processing. To understand why this system exists in its current, deeply chaotic form, you have to look at the structural void left behind by traditional media. Regional sports networks were collapsing under the weight of cord cutting. Broadcast networks were watching live ratings age into an uncomfortable demographic bracket, and state legislatures were staring at massive post-pandemic tax revenue shortfalls. Into this void stepped the sportsbooks. They offered state governments a seamless argument: legalize digital sports betting, tax the gross revenues at rates ranging from 6.75% in Nevada to an eye-watering 51% in New York, and watch the public treasury fill up without raising income taxes by a single cent. It was the ultimate political free lunch. But building a digital casino disguised as a sports app required an underlying financial machinery that looks less like a Las Vegas Strip hotel and more like a high-frequency trading desk wrapped in a fantasy sports interface. The core financial mechanism of a sportsbook relies on an illusion, the idea that the house makes its money by being smarter than the bettor. It doesn't. The house makes its money by being an exchange that charges a convenience fee for human misplaced confidence. When a bookmaker sets a line, say, setting a point spread at -3 for the home team, they are not predicting the precise outcome of a football game. They are attempting to set a price that attracts equal amounts of money on both sides of the wager. If 10,000 people bet $11 on Team A and 10,000 people bet $11 on Team B, the sportsbook collects $220,000 in total wagers. The winning side receives their original $11 back plus $10 in profit, eating up $210,000 of the total pool. The remaining $10,000 stays in the sportsbook's bank account. That 10% surcharge on losing wagers is the vigorish, or the VIG. It is the mathematical tax that ensures the operator never has to care who actually wins the game. Except the real world rarely delivers a perfectly balanced board. In practice, public money floods heavily toward favorites, home teams, and famous quarterbacks. This is where the modern sportsbook transforms into a sophisticated risk management desk. If 70% of the total cash shifts onto one side of a game, the sportsbook faces what traders call directional exposure. If the favorite covers the spread, the book takes a massive loss on that specific event. To mitigate this, operators deploy algorithmic pricing engines that shift the line in real time, making the opposing side more attractive to balance the books, or they offload their exposure onto global B2B market makers like Kambi or Genius Sports. Furthermore, the modern mobile app has aggressively phased out the traditional single-game spread bet, where the margin for the house is thin and vulnerable in favor of high-margin derivative products. Chief among these is the same-game parlay. By allowing users to stack multiple dependent outcomes into a single ticket, hoping a receiver gets 50 yards, a quarterback throws 2 touchdowns, and the team wins, the sportsbook compound its mathematical advantage exponential times. While a standard straight bet carries a house edge of roughly 4.76%, a complex multi-leg parlay routinely carries a house edge exceeding 20 to 30%. The product is not designed to predict sports. It is engineered to maximize structural leverage over the bettor's emotional decision-making. The scale of this enterprise is staggering, both in its raw velocity and its comparison to traditional economic sectors. In 2023 alone, Americans wagered over $120 billion on sports through legal channels, generating more than $10 billion in gross gaming revenue for operators. To put that in perspective, that annual wager handle exceeds the entire annual gross domestic product of small nation-states like Ecuador or Slovakia. It rivals the annual domestic box office revenues of Hollywood's peak years by an order of magnitude. Industry research firms like Eilers and Krejcik Gaming calculate that major market leaders like DraftKings and FanDuel spent billions on customer acquisition during the initial expansion push, outspending traditional consumer brands to dominate sports broadcast commercial breaks. In key launch states like Pennsylvania or Illinois, the monthly handle routinely crosses the $1 billion mark, with state treasuries collecting tens of millions of dollars per month in tax revenues from a service that produces no physical goods, builds no physical infrastructure, and employs a fraction of the workforce required by traditional brick-and-mortar hospitality businesses. Yet despite this flood of capital, the business model suffered a catastrophic breaking point between 2021 and 2023, a period that revealed the structural fragility of venture capital-backed consumer technology applied to gambling. During the gold rush phase, sportsbooks operated under a software-as-a-service mentality. Buy market share at any cost, offer free bets, and match deposits up to thousands of dollars per user, and worry about profitability later. The unit economics were absurd. Operators were spending $500 to $800 to acquire a user whose average lifetime value was capped by the simple reality that most casual bettors eventually run out of disposable income and quit. Promotional credit spending reached such extreme levels that in some jurisdictions, companies were generating hundreds of millions of dollars in top-line handle while reporting massive net operational losses. When global interest rates rose and Wall Street suddenly demanded actual cash flow over hypergrowth metrics, the industry experienced a brutal reckoning. Stock values for publicly traded pure-play sportsbooks plummeted by 60 to 80% from their peak heights. Smaller operators who lacked the deep balance sheets required to sustain the regulatory compliance costs, state licensing fees, and aggressive marketing wars were forced into abrupt liquidations or fire sale acquisitions. Companies like PointsBet sold their North American operations at a steep discount, while media corporations that had eagerly launched co-branded sportsbooks realized that managing the financial risk of millions of individual retail wagers was vastly more toxic than simply selling banner ads to them. The market rapidly consolidated into a duopoly, leaving over 70% of the total market share in the hands of just 2 major players. While the rest of the industry scrambled to cut promotional spending, reduce sign-up bonuses, and extract higher margins from their remaining user base through increasingly aggressive parlay promotions. What survived this burn rate apocalypse is a permanently altered entertainment economy. The lines between sports media, league operations, and financial wagering have been thoroughly erased. Professional sports leagues that once spent decades fighting in federal court to prevent their games from being associated with gambling now sign multi-million-dollar official data partnerships, integrating live odds displays directly into regional telecasts and arena scoreboards. The regional sports network model, which relied on passive cable subscriptions, is being replaced by interactive viewing experiences designed specifically to keep the viewer's eye glued to micro-betting markets, predicting whether the next pitch will be a ball or a strike, or whether a free throw will hit the rim. The broader economy inherited a new form of micro-trading disguised as fandom. The structural friction of placing a wager, once requiring a trip to a casino or a phone call to an illicit bookmaker, has been reduced to a facial recognition scan on a glass screen. The legacy of this shift is not found in the pristine balance sheets of the surviving operators, who have finally edged into marginal quarterly profitability by scaling back promotional giveaways and squeezing higher margins out of sophisticated parlay engines. It is found in the cultural normalization of treating every athletic play as a financial event. The game on the field is no longer the primary product. It is merely the random number generator that settles millions of tiny, high-margin micro-contracts executing simultaneously in the palms of audience members sitting quietly on their couches. The stadium lights eventually go down, the broadcast ends, and the final score is archived. The credits rolled, the write-down didn't.